Period Chronicles was recently canceled, Soul Worker Online is shutting down, but thankfully we have upcoming anime MMOs like Blue Protocol, Project BBQ, Tower of Fantasy, and Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. These games will go a ways to satiate that thirst, that hunger we have to play an anime MMO, but until those games come out over the next year or two, we're left wondering what anime MMOs should we be playing right now? And that is what I am here today to discuss, because it is February 2021. It is a brand new year, and there are less MMOs this year than there were last year. Now, before we go any further, I do want to note that I am doing a small giveaway. This giveaway in question will allow you to choose any MMORPG you want: Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft, The Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2 expansions, literally any MMO you want. All you have to do is be actively subscribed to this channel, because this giveaway is only for our viewers, and then go down into the comment section below and leave a comment stating what your favorite anime MMORPG is and why that is the case. I will go ahead and choose whoever's response I think is the best, and then I will DM you, and then you can claim your game. Whatever game you want, it's that simple. Also, did you know that we stream over on Twitch 3 days a week at twitch.tv/MMOByte? Yeah, every Tuesday, every Saturday, and every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We stream a plethora of different games. We're gonna be streaming a few hours from when this video goes live. So if you wanna come over and join us today, tomorrow, any week, you're more than welcome to. We would love to have you. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump right into this with Phantasy Star Online 2. I know I discussed this right in the intro of the video, but this game right here, I have been playing the Japanese version of PSO2 for years now, or okay, I haven't been for the last year because this game has been released worldwide since, but I played this way back when it was exclusive to Japan, and I poured so many hours into this game. It is actually unreal. Now, unlike your traditional MMORPGs, PSO2 is actually a hub MMO, which means that it does not have a large open world that allows you to freely roam and explore it. There aren't side quests you'll find out in the world. There aren't other players you'll find out in the world. The game takes place predominantly within the quest hub. The hub itself is a space station located up in space, evidently. And you go about taking certain missions that are essentially what quests would be. You know, like fetch quests or hunting quests or gathering quests. Some of them are much larger and more raid-esque style of questing, and they have a much larger total party size as well. But otherwise, the game is completely instanced and has completely instanced zones. So typically, while you can actually encounter the odd other player in your instance, I'm still not entirely certain how that works, but you will typically form a group out of your friends list or in the quest hub itself, and then you will deploy yourself and go about trying to attempt to complete whatever quest it is you've taken. The combat in PSO2 is admittedly, now that Soul Worker is closing down, I would say the best the anime genre has, because while I used to think that Soul Worker was definitely up there and would rival PSO2's combat, since Soul Worker is shutting down for the foreseeable future, PSO2 is going to have absolutely no competition. And the fact that you can alternate between weapons, having 3 equipped at any given time, really gives you this unique sense of freedom that not many other MMOs do. Now, I know there aren't really that many of you that are highly interested in hub MMOs, and that's perfectly understandable, but for those of you that are, or for those of you that want to go ahead and try something new if you haven't already, then I totally urge you to go with PSO2, because this is by far the best anime MMORPG the genre has to offer. Unless you consider Final Fantasy XIV an anime MMO. I know in the past when I've done videos like this, I've actually not included Final Fantasy XIV, and I've had people just grill me because they were of the impression that Final Fantasy XIV is an anime MMO. So I guess real quick, for those of you that are still watching, and I honestly hope there are still plenty of you that are, do you consider Final Fantasy XIV an anime MMO? Regardless, next let's talk about Mabinogi, because this is by far the most unique anime MMO you will encounter. But not just that, this is also simultaneously the most unique MMO you will encounter, period. Now, I've included Mabinogi in previous years' top 10 lists because in my opinion, this is something that every single player needs to experience. Every gamer that is interested in MMOs is sorely mistaken if they think that Mabinogi is like your traditional MMOs, because it's not. Like, the freedom, the sheer freedom you are given in this game to not only explore the world at your own pace, to level at your own pace. I mean, let's just talk about the leveling here for a second. Yes, it utilizes a traditional leveling system. You level up via questing, via grinding in dungeons, via killing monsters, but at the same time, after a certain point, you're capable of actually rebirthing. This allows you to go all the way back down to level 1, but with added bonuses this time. And I know people that have rebirth. I think they mentioned they had rebirth thousands of times. Like, I cannot mentally fathom having to level your character up. I don't even know what the level cap is. I think they mentioned there is no actual level cap in Mabinogi. So leveling yourself up almost infinitely and then rebirthing yourself all the way back down and then beginning the leveling process all over again, leveling yourself all the way up and then rebirthing again, and then repeating this thousands of times to make sure you are statistically superior to every other player. But while that is definitely a very interesting leveling system, there is significantly more to the game than that. The combat itself is very unique. Whenever I go and attempt to explain the combat in Mabinogi, I'm left just telling people you have to try it yourself, because it is just so different to anything you're used to. While you can technically click the monster you want to attack, it utilizes this weird rock, paper, scissors-esque system where certain abilities are classified as a certain type of attack, and that attack is stronger against a certain other type of attack, but weaker against a certain other type of attack. So then there's this triangle of what is stronger and what is weaker against one another. Unlike PSO2 though, which is instant, Mabinogi utilizes segregated zones, which means that the zones are disconnected from one another, but they are disconnected by a small loading screen. After loading through, you have a large zone and there are tons of players running around doing their own thing. Speaking of doing your own thing, in Mabinogi, again, the freedom to do whatever you want, explore, fight, raid dungeons, level and rebirth, get a part-time job. Like, this game, if you have a social life and you actually enjoy this game, I would recommend quitting one of them. Speaking of quitting, I know a lot of people have actually quit Tree of Savior over the few years that it's been available, but I honestly, as the game is right now, do not understand why it is not more popular. MRSSTIX as an example here. She has not played many anime MMORPGs. I've had her play through several on stream over the last few months, and while playing Tree of Savior, admittedly, she'd go into it thinking, wow, this is a very unusual looking game, because it is. And she doesn't typically play those top-down isometric MMOs outside of Lost Ark. But after playing through it, she admitted that she was actually having a lot of fun, and we've continued to stream Tree of Savior multiple times since. And that is because Tree of Savior is just a lot of fun. Yes, like Mabinogi utilizes segregated zones, and yes, those zones in specific are fairly linear. I feel like the majority of top-down isometric MMOs and top-down isometric games in general all have incredibly linear zones. There isn't really much in the form of exploration. You kind of just pick a direction and you run that direction. But the combat in this game, man, I don't know what it is about top-down isometric MMOs, but they have the best combat. Like, we have played hundreds of hours of Lost Ark, and the combat in that game is incredible. The combat in Tree of Savior is absolutely fantastic. Not only are the abilities very aesthetically appealing, but even your little character models, even your animations, everything is really, really well done. I will say that while this is definitely a traditional MMO, but from a top-down isometric perspective, it is a little bit confusing when trying to keep track of what it is you're actively doing. But the community within the game itself was incredibly helpful. Speaking of community, that is something that we have not really seen much of in Dragon Nest. We've streamed Dragon Nest a couple times, and honestly, we haven't really found all that many players playing it. We know that a lot of people loved Dragon Nest. I don't know whether necessarily they still love Dragon Nest, but whenever we ask people what to play, whenever we ask people what their favorite MMOs used to be, Dragon Nest always comes up. And I get it. The game, it was very, very predominantly PvP heavy. People loved the PvP in this game. Unfortunately, I never personally had the opportunity to play Dragon Nest when it was popular, when it was relevant. And while neither MRSSTIX nor I have actually participated in the PvP thus far, we have participated in a lot of the PvE. The game is very, very narrative heavy. There's a lot of story, and each story propels you through each of the zones, which are actually instant, just FYI. I know that is going to turn some people off, but with how popular Dragon Nest was once upon a time, I don't understand why that would still be the case. Now, unlike PSO2, Dragon Nest's instances are a little bit different. See, there are various different quest hubs that you can navigate between, and to get to each quest hub, you have to go through loading screens. And those loading screens actually lead to the instances that you can enter. So this provides a little bit of freedom to go out and explore some of the interconnected areas. You can do this either by yourself or you can do it with other players, so the game itself doesn't feel as small and isolated. Outside of that though, this is a very traditional anime MMO. You take quests, you go out into the dungeons, you do them, you fight the bosses at the end of each dungeon. And the combat, like, I know people say that the combat in Dragon Nest was one of the main appeals of the game because the combat was, at least at one point, absolutely amazing, like mind-blowingly amazing. And after getting into Dragon Nest and after pouring hours and hours into it, yeah, the combat is pretty good, but it is nowhere near as good as people were leading me to believe that it was. Speaking of good combat though, man, Dungeon Fighter Online has some of the flashiest combat that I have ever seen. I have poured probably somewhere between 40, maybe 50 hours of game time into this game. And that is because it is just so much fun. I'm not typically a fan of games like Dungeon Fighter Online. I think they're just too linear for me. I like having large areas that I get to explore and search out treasure, stronger monsters. But there are two games like this that I have enjoyed that have that weird, like, horizontal type of progression, and they are Maple Story, the first one, and Dungeon Fighter Online. Dungeon Fighter Online specifically has a lot of story, like so much story, like enough to fill a novel or make a multi-part movie. I'm surprised they actually haven't made a movie based on Dungeon Fighter Online yet, especially considering how popular this is within China. Like, there are, I think on average, like 5 million players logged into this game at any point during the day, at any time of the week. And you'd think with that many active players, they would have opted to monopolize on the popularity. But I digress. This game is a hub MMO. It has a ton of hubs. I think it actually probably has more hubs than any other MMO I've seen. And as such, the zones that you enter are instanced. You can enter them with other party members or you can enter them by yourself. I know some of the later content requires party members. You cannot tackle this stuff alone. I tried to and I got wiped. I did a video on this and whoo, it was embarrassing. Speaking of embarrassing, the amount of time I actually poured into Flife, man, I played this game back in the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s, like somewhere around 2007 through 2011. Yeah, it was really that long ago. And man, that makes me feel really, really old. But regardless, Flife was one of the anime MMOs that I dedicated a lot of time to. At the time, I played through Flife, Fiesta, and Tales of Pirates. Unfortunately, Tales of Pirates is now shut down. It has been shut down for years. Fiesta Online well, we actually streamed that recently and yeah, was not what I remembered. But Flife is exactly as I remembered. Like, how many of you guys have played Flife? How many of you guys' first flying experience was within Flife? Because the very first time I ever mounted an aerial mount was in this game. I remember when you hit, I don't know if it was level 20 or level 30, but you got given a broomstick and that broomstick could fly. And the flight was really, really slow. But man, my mind could not comprehend what I was experiencing within that game. I was up in the air on a broomstick flying around above everything. And unfortunately, I have flown in games like Final Fantasy XIV, in World of Warcraft, in Perfect World, and I've never had that same experience since, which is really unfortunate because that was something else. And while Flife is a much slower, much more dated looking and feeling tab target MMO, this is something that requires a lot of time, requires a lot of effort to actually push through, but otherwise is a very very, very fun game. Now, if I recall, the zones are segregated as well. This is not a complete open world, not like Perfect World or World of Warcraft, but the zones themselves are so large. I remember spending like the first 10, maybe 15 hours just in the first zone alone. Now, speaking of zones, speaking of instance content, this is the last game I'm going to be talking about, and that game in specific is Closers Online. The reason I'm listing this here is because somehow this has actually outlived Soul Worker Online. Although, admittedly, if you think about it, Soul Worker Online is closing down temporarily while they migrate on over to the developer Lion Games, who actually develops the game, as opposed to being published by Gameforge. So Lion Games is going to self-publish Soul Worker, kind of like Closers Online did when NMAS Entertainment shut down. NMAS Entertainment shut down, they lost the rights to Terra, they lost the rights to Closers, but I'm pretty sure it's Nautic Games that reacquired the rights to publish Closers globally, and from what I've heard, they're doing a fantastic job of it. Now, this game, much like PSO2, much like Soul Worker, is a hub MMO, but where games like PSO2 have a singular hub, Closers Online has various different hubs, and some of those hubs are only specific to certain characters. Now, each hub has its own selection of quests, has its own selection of levels, and the game is filled with tons of unique NPCs. I'm pretty sure it still has a fairly active player base, if by active you consider maybe a couple thousand people playing it per day. But I mean, at the same time, with the popularity of Anime MMORPGs right now, I feel like a couple thousand people playing it per day is still a positive. It's still something to brag about. Closers was probably one of my favorite hub MMOs way back when I used to play it. Our channel, MMOByte, was actually responsible for increasing the popularity of both Soul Worker and Closers, as I did multiple different videos on it when they were in their origin countries, videos that actually went on to garner hundreds of thousands of views each. And two of the things that I enjoyed the most in that game were its combat and its graphics. The graphics in this game, the environments, the characters, the character models, the outfits all look incredible. And then the combat itself, it is so fast, it is so fluid, it is very, very flashy, and I am a big fan of flashy combat, and this game kind of felt like a brawler or like a beat 'em up type of game, and I really haven't played many titles like that, so this was kind of something new, especially in terms of it being an MMO. But you know what, I wanted to go ahead and list other titles here, like Aura Kingdom or Twin Saga or Grand Fantasia or Eden Eternal. Like, I don't know, there just really aren't that many anime MMORPGs out there right now that are worth investing time into, especially if you haven't played them yet. The anime MMO market right now is just in a really bad place, especially when games like Period Chronicles, which everyone was eagerly anticipating, ended up getting canceled. I will forever hold a grudge against you, Nexon, for doing that. Now, I couldn't even make it to 10 games here because there just aren't 10 anime MMOs out there right now that are worth it. But hopefully one of the 7 games that I listed here helped tide you over for long enough until something like Project BBQ or Blue Protocol or Tower of Fantasy or PSO2 New Genesis releases, or maybe until something like New World or Ilion comes out, because we do have plenty of MMOs slated for release this year in 2021. But once again, what do you think is the best anime MMORPG right now? If you have a difference of opinion to me, or you think that there's an anime MMO that should have been included, let me know down in the comment section below. I would love to go ahead and stream the game and maybe include it in a future top 10 list. But anyway guys, that is it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Someday soon I'm gonna make it. Yeah, all hard work's gonna